In the late 16th century, the world map was being redrawn by ambitious European powers. For Portugal, a small nation with a massive maritime empire, the winds of change were blowing towards the vast, mysterious continent of Africa. The year is 1575. This isn't just a date, it's a turning point. It's the year Portugal decided to move beyond trading posts and establish its first true colony in sub-Saharan Africa. This is the story of how Angola was born from ambition, conflict, and the relentless pursuit of wealth. Before 1575, Portugal's presence in West Central Africa was mostly coastal. Since the 1480s, their caravels had been exploring the coastline, establishing contact with the powerful Kingdom of Congo. This relationship started with a mix of mutual curiosity and respect. The Portuguese brought new technologies, goods, and Christianity. The Congo elite, in turn, saw potential allies and a gateway to new trade opportunities. For decades, it was a partnership, albeit an unequal one. The Portuguese were primarily interested in one commodity above all others: enslaved people needed to work the sprawling sugar plantations in Brazil and São Tomé. But as the 16th century wore on, this coastal trading model started to feel limiting. The demand for labor in Brazil was exploding. Portuguese traders and officials on the ground grew frustrated. They were dependent on the goodwill of African kings and middlemen to supply captives. What if they could control the source directly? What if they could cut out the middlemen and seize the territory for themselves? This was a radical idea, a departure from a century of policy. Enter Paulo Dias de Novaes. He wasn't just any explorer. He was the grandson of Bartolomeu Dias, the legendary navigator who first rounded the Cape of Good Hope. Adventure and ambition ran in his blood. Novaes had spent time in the region and saw immense potential. He returned to Lisbon with a bold proposal for King Sebastian I. He pitched a vision of a new territory, a proprietary colony that he would govern. He promised the crown not just a steady flow of captives for Brazil, but also something more tantalizing: silver. Rumors were swirling about legendary silver mines hidden deep in the interior, in the kingdom of Ndongo. The promise of a new Potosi in Africa was too tempting for the Portuguese crown to ignore. In 1571, the king granted Novaes a charter, the Carta de Doacaio. It was a license to conquer. It gave him the right to build forts, establish settlements, and govern the land between the Kwanza and Bengo rivers. In return, he would fund the expedition himself and send riches back to Portugal. This was the blueprint for Angola. In late 1575, after years of preparation, Paulo Dias de Novaes and his fleet of several hundred soldiers, priests, and artisans arrived at the Ilha de Luanda, a sandy island just off the coast. Their arrival was not met with open arms. The local power was the Kingdom of Ndongo, ruled by a king titled Angola, the very name from which Angola is derived. At first, the Angola was cautiously welcoming. He saw the Portuguese as potential allies against his rivals, especially the powerful Kingdom of Congo to the north. Novaes played along, presenting himself as a friend and trading partner. He established his first settlement on the mainland, São Paulo de Assunção de Luanda, which we know today as Luanda, the capital of modern Angola. For a few years, a fragile peace held. The Portuguese traded textiles and wine for ivory, food, and, of course, people. But Novaes and his men were not content to be mere traders. They were conquerors waiting for their moment. They were mapping the territory, assessing military strengths, and searching for those elusive silver mines. The tension was palpable. The Angola grew increasingly suspicious of these heavily armed foreigners building a permanent fort on his doorstep. The breaking point came in 1579. The alliance shattered. The exact trigger is debated by historians, but the result was all-out war. Novaes, believing the time was right to strike, launched a military campaign up the Kwanza River Valley. He aimed to subjugate the Ndongo kingdom and seize the supposed silver mines by force. This marked the beginning of decades of brutal warfare. The Portuguese had superior firearms, muskets and cannons, which gave them a significant advantage in open battles. They built a series of presidios, or fortified garrisons, along the river, creating a corridor of control that pushed deeper and deeper into Ndongo territory. But this was no easy conquest. The Ndongo people were fierce warriors. They knew the terrain intimately and used guerrilla tactics to harass the Portuguese columns. The tropical climate was another formidable enemy. Disease, like malaria and yellow fever, decimated the European troops. The dream of a quick victory and legendary silver mines quickly evaporated. The silver mines were never found. They were likely just a rumor, a convenient justification for conquest. With the dream of silver dead, the colony's sole purpose snapped into sharp focus: the slave trade. The wars of conquest became massive slave raiding operations. The forts built along the Kwanza River weren't just military outposts, they were holding pens, funneling a constant stream of captured men, women, and children down to the port of Luanda. From there, they were packed onto ships for the horrific Middle Passage to Brazil. The colony of Angola became the brutal engine of the South Atlantic slave economy. For the next 3 centuries, it would be one of the largest single sources of enslaved people in the entire Atlantic world. While the Portuguese focused on Ndongo, they also faced other challenges. They clashed with Dutch rivals who tried to seize Luanda in the 17th century. And they faced incredible resistance from within Africa. The most famous figure of this resistance was Queen Zingambandu of Ndongo and Matamba. A brilliant diplomat and military strategist, she spent decades fighting the Portuguese, forming alliances, and becoming a legendary symbol of resistance against colonial invasion. Her story is so incredible it deserves its own video. So, 1575 wasn't just the year a fort was built. It was the year a new kind of colonialism was unleashed in Africa. It was a shift from trading at the margins to outright territorial conquest. Driven by a phantom promise of silver but sustained by the grim reality of the slave trade, Paulo Dias de Novaes laid the foundations for a colony that would endure for 400 years. Its creation was a violent, protracted process that fundamentally reshaped the history of West Central Africa and fueled the growth of Brazil. The legacy of this moment is complex and painful, a story of power, resistance, and the creation of a nation forged in fire. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this journey into the past interesting, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history. Let me know in the comments what other historical turning points you'd like to explore next. See you in the next video.